Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the W podcast. It's episode 6. I'm Wolvy. I have SaucyJay here with me. We're both a little bit sick, so excuse us coughing and sniffing into the mics. But we had some amazing announcements that Datamined for the next patch. The PTR is still not up, but we have a lot to talk about, so we just couldn't not dive straight in and go through those topics. I guess you're excited as you, Jay?
I am super excited. I'm also I like the new logo, so good job. Wolvie.
Oh yeah, we
Great
have a
job.
new logo, guys. So give us a thumbs up if you like it. And without further ado, I guess we can just jump straight in. So we're gonna start with some of the topics that caused a lot of turmoil because they were news that sounded good, but then they were not worded correctly for some reason by Blizzard. So people are left wondering, hey, what is going on? And is it what I'm reading, or is it something else? So the first one concerns the Mythic Plus, and the announcement says that there's going to be a new achievement at 2850 rating. You get that achievement, and it says that after you get this and you clear a Mythic Plus dungeon within the timer, it will no longer reduce the key level of your keystones below 12 for the season. So I thought initially that this means that once you get to a 12, obviously you cannot go below. And if you get to a 13, it's not going to go below 13 and so forth and so forth. But now that I read it more carefully, I don't think that's the case. I think there's just that one threshold, which is 12. You can go up to 13s, 14s. They're still going to deplete. They're just not going to go below 12. And I would assume that the keys below 12 are also going to deplete. If, let's say, you have an 11, you don't time it, it's going to go to a 10. So that is a little bit less exciting than what I initially thought. But am I reading this wrong?
I as you were talking about it, I think you're accurate. And the more I think about it, it all revolves around the achievement. And so, with the achievement being focused at 2850, I think it makes a lot of sense that it is specifically for the level 12 keystones, and that's a big number because that's where you start to lose the bargain, right? You don't get the affixes essentially. So I think that was probably a complaint from the people at that tier where they're doing the key at 12. There's no fixes. They bomb it. It goes back to 11. Now they're dealing with the fixes, and so I think that's cool if you can get the 2050. Actually, I think it's good.
Yeah, and my initial thought that even if it's 13, the 13 is not going to deplete. That would actually make Mythic Plus like a tournament triumph, because then you could just go into the same key over and over again and like do a crazy first spool. If it goes fine, you complete the key. If not, you just reset it, go again. So that's something that they're definitely not aiming to do. And I guess just having this 12 is going to be a little bit better, especially in that range where the LFG kind of starts to go very scarce. Um, and I saw some comments in the community. This is their first step into trying something like that. So at the very least, thumbs up. It's a change. They're trying something. We'll see how it works. But it's better than not to have it for sure.
I agree.
In the same article, they are also mentioning the affixes. Now, they're changing all of the affixes to give you a damage increase instead of crit, master, whatever it was before. And they're also going to reduce the damage taken by enemies if you don't deal with the affix. It doesn't matter what the affix is. And there are some changes. So the first one, the orbs that we have to soak are gone, which I think is quite welcome because there were many situations in some bosses where you just couldn't soak them. So the boss got buffed and then he one-shots you. So not many people are a fan of that affix, and being it gone is nice. It is getting replaced by a pulsar. While in combat, Xal'atath summons pulsars that orbit players. That's all that it says. So we don't know what that means. Are you going to be killing those orbs? Are you going to be dispelling them? Are you going to be healing them? It's
Avoiding them. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess we're gonna see. Let's just hope it's not worse than what it was before. Another change, which is wild to me, is that the Xal'atath's Guile is now going to increase the health and damage of enemies by 12% per key level instead of 10. This is what you get after 12. And we've talked multiple times before in the podcast that this season doesn't feel well because your progression path is not smooth. you had a huge jump from 9 to 10s because all of a sudden you start getting both Tyrannical and Fortified. And then this Gaio Affix kicks in a plus 12. So there's a huge gap there, and then the scaling of the keys starts to be even harder. And I was thinking about this the other day because in previous seasons, I was able to push, let's say, like 24s, 25, 26s, and doing a keystone level at there, you would think, okay, I know that the next level is going to be a little bit harder, but I think it's manageable, right? If we all play good, maybe if we don't make mistakes, if we don't die, we can do it. However, now once I push the 13, I'm like, bro, there's no way we can do the 14 with this group. Like it's impossible. So this is already the reality. This is already the case. And now they're making these jumps even bigger. Um, I'm kind of even angry about it because they did say in a blue poll somewhere that they understand that the progression path is not that smooth, and now they're all of a sudden they're making it even harder. So that is a wild take, and of course everything can change from now until the release of the patch. But I simply do not understand that change.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just gonna make it harder to push the higher levels, and I don't know if they're intentionally trying to make it so that we don't see 17s, 16s, and 17s because that's a lot of damage, and that's at a certain level, it's almost unhealable. Uh, what is the intention there? And as we get into some of the other notes, they kind of gave some kind of intentional notes around things, but they kind of left that out in this whole affixes thing. So we don't really know where they're going with this. All we just see is the number change, and it's kind of something that, as you already mentioned, is kind of a step in the wrong direction when it comes to progression because it's actually getting harder above 12. Which I mean, I get it's supposed to be, but this is just makes that step a bit bigger.
Yeah. Oh, I guess one thing that we can say with a certainty right here is that this is the preliminary notes, and they are subject to change once the PTR is live, and they're definitely subject to change once by the time we actually get this live on the servers. So let's see. They did a lot of iterations on the affixes before the start of the War Within, so maybe they're gonna get some feedback now for this, and maybe some of those things are going to change. All right. Excuse me. So there was another exciting piece of news that got a lot of people hyped, and that was in regards to the catalyst changes. Now, there, even right now in the game, there is an achievement that basically makes you achieve either 2k IO rating, 1600 in PvP, or defeat the final raid boss on Heroic. And that gives you that token, which you can then exchange for a tier piece. This is how it works right now. Now, the initial release of the news was that they would allow you to get, instead of this token, you would get a catalyst charge that you can use in your catalyst, an extra catalyst charge. And it got us really exciting because the initial announcement made it sound that if you complete any of these three items, the Mythic Plus, the Rate, or the PvP, you would get one extra charge. Which means that if you complete all three, then you would get 3 charges. And that sounded like a lot because technically you can do that all in the first week, right? It's not going to be easy, but you can do that all in the first week. And I started thinking, okay, that's good. That's very good. But then I'll have to do PvP maybe. I mean, to get that extra charge, that sounds cringe. But then they changed the wording, and now it's only one of these as before. And I guess at the big scheme of things, that is actually a nerf because before you would get that token, it doesn't matter how you get it, and then you can exchange it and get a hero track piece to equip in your gear. Now you have a catalyst charge, which means that you can convert any piece that you want, not only the 5 pieces that are your tier slots, but you actually have to have something to convert, and you don't want to be converting veteran gear. So that means that in order to use that charge, you need to have a hero track piece of gear on the slot where you want to convert it. And that actually sounds like a nerf, as you pointed out earlier.
Yeah, but if this is the article that's current active, the wording still reads that you actually get 3, and and in that case, that would be more welcoming to me. So
Oh, here's the blue post. So And actually, I think that's the original. I'm not sure. Um, okay, I'm a little bit confused, but they definitely changed the wording, and from the new wording, which I think what we're seeing right now is the old one. So I'm not gonna read it, but they did change the wording, and now I'm pretty sure it's just gonna be one charge. So mind what you,
Big nerf,
yeah,
huge nerf. Yeah, yeah. It's that's like totally not something to be excited for. In the old way, if it was three, yeah, for sure, that's great because I do all three, right? So I would
yeah.
have gotten three pieces of tier in the first week, and if I got one from the raid, then I'm done. I'm already done
Well,
for
actually, I
days.
think we had a catalyst charge in the very first week, and then once every 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
that means that it's like by any means killing heroic first boss in the first week, getting all the dungeons at a plus I don't know 7. Maybe you can
that's
allow
pretty
some
low.
sixes.
Yeah,
With
yeah,
being under geared, of course, because it's gonna be a brand new tier. And then I don't know how hard is 1600 rating in PvP. I played with some
pretty
friends.
easy.
It's
It was
easy, right?
overnight.
Yeah. I mean, I've
It was
been
one
there,
day.
so it must be easy, right? If I manage to achieve it. Um, so it's a tall order to get all of these in the first week, but then if you get a charge for each one of them, I mean, you can easily do them in, let's say, 2 weeks or something like that, even. And that sounded a lot. Like getting 4 charges right away, that's basically free tier. All right. I mean, you have to farm the pieces, but then uh, M plus is basically spammable, so you can easily go and farm whatever you need. So maybe that was way too much, but then converting the token to a catalyst charge, I don't get what they're trying to do. I mean, it's the token was already in game, so it's not like they're making their life easier or something like this. Um, and now they're making you farm a little bit more. I was very happy with the token because, especially on olds, it's not that easy to get hero track gear, especially in the beginning of the season. So that would be one
Yep.
extra piece that I would get from there. Now that's
Yeah.
gone because you have to farm it.
And you could totally pick with this specific one you wanted, which was kind of nice because
Yeah,
it let you, focus easy. Usually you only get four pieces on purpose and get usually the
yeah,
off piece is like the best secondary stats. So now it's kind of like if you want your foresight, you're just gonna have to try to just get it when you can if you get the lucky piece. So
yeah.
I think this is a big nerf. To me, I don't understand the logic. It just goes backwards.
Yeah, and I mean, I like that they're doing changes and everything, but the wording actually got us excited because initially we thought, "Whoo, free charges for everyone, rejoice!" But now it's like, "Oh, uh-oh, okay, so I actually
Didn't
have to go
know
farm the gear
better.
now." Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, it is what it is. I will see how this is going, or if it's going to change at all. And then there are a lot of class tuning and class changes. We're gonna talk about the healer ones in specific in more detail, but amongst them, there is an augmentation evoker change that basically says that the evoker and the even might buff that they're giving to the party is no longer going to affect tanks and healers. So, if we're reading this correctly, does that mean augmentation evoker? Rest in peace.
You know, not for raids. I don't think Mythic Plus. I think it won't be meta anymore, and I think with it not being meta, that opens up devastation and preservation a lot more. So I think there's still a place for augmentation, evoker, and raid, uh, but not keys. I think this effectively will kind of gut it from Mythic Plus.
Yeah, I mean, in raids, that's actually a buff because I don't think Evoker ever wants to buff a tank or a healer in raid, right? So this is actually quite welcome in there. But in Mythic Plus, that made a huge difference. And this is why Evoker is basically mandatory in higher keys because they're buffing not only the DPS, they're helping you with the tank and the healer, which is more survivability, more healing. And now they're basically getting gutted there, which I kind of like because I'm not a fan of the augmentation evoker in general because uh, I'm plugging my keys. So it's obviously it's really good into organized groups, but in pug keys, you have way too many variables that can go wrong. So first, your evoker can be bad. Any player can be bad in a puck. But then, even if they're good, they're buffing two other players, and if one of those two players is bad, you're kind of one player short and 1.5 player short now, right?
Yep,
So
exactly.
I didn't like the the way that it was implemented. So now it's probably definitely not going to be preferred in lower keys, I think. There was this hype that people would be like, oh, let's find Aug because they're good, but they didn't realize what actually happens in PUGs. But maybe this is actually going way too hard because, way too far, actually. Because now it's gonna be completely dead in Mythic Plus, but maybe I'm just delusional. I don't know.
No, I think you nailed it on one of the previous episodes. You said Aug is one of those things where it's either best or worst, and
Yeah.
there's no middle ground with it because it's a support class that is purely support, and so it's just time for them to take a back seat for a while. We'll see them again maybe in another couple seasons.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can jump to the class changes straight away then. Now, there are a lot of changes for many of the classes. For example, Demon Hunter is getting some love. We know that they were underperforming in both their specs. So that is something to look forward to. A lot of players and a lot of classes that were not in the right spot in this tier are getting some love, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we're going to focus, of course, more on the healer side of things. And we're going to start with the Druid. Now, the Druid has a huge rework, as it seems, because they're getting a lot of changes. They're getting a lot of new talents. They're getting a lot of things shifted in their tree. I don't think we've seen the trees yet and how exactly they're going to look like. But have you read through all of this?
Yeah, I mean I skimmed through it. I didn't super study it, but a ton of changes, new abilities. I mean, it's a lot of it focused around damage as well, which is kind of interesting, especially for Resto.
Yeah.
So it seems like they want Resto Druids doing a bit more damage, which is kind of nice. And that's welcoming. I mean, you made it again going back to some of your comments. You had a comment about all healers feeling like discipline priests and the amount of damage they do, and this is another reflection of that, where it's just like, okay, we're buffing the damage, but also we're buffing it even more for Resto Druid, which is it's fun. It's fun to play Resto Druid to do damage, especially in arenas. Even in keys, it's kind of cool. So there's this trend that is going in that direction, and I think some people like it, some people hate it. I've heard healers say like, I just want to heal,
Yeah.
but the fact is that it's almost a requirement that you got to do damage. So
Yeah, we got a lot of comments, by the way, from your previous comments about the Rest of Druid that the APM is way too high. So we got a lot of people actually tuning into the comments of our podcast and saying, yeah, it is actually kind of insane, even if you're not trying to DPS that much. And I think some of the changes that they're doing are actually in towards that direction. Now, I can't find them specifically here because it's a lot of text, but they're changing how the mastery works for restoration. And
yep,
now you are going to get more healing based on the. Um, uh, it's still the amount of HOTS that you have, but you get more for the first one and then less for the subsequent ones, right? So
right,
that
yep,
means that you don't need to have all the HOTS running to everybody so you can get max healing and just swam your keys on the keyboard. Now you're gonna get a lot of benefit even if you have just one or two HOTS already
right,
rolling.
which is
So
big.
hopefully that you still get benefit from the subsequent ones. It's just not gonna be that big. So maybe that can reduce a little bit the APM and the spamming of all those HOTS in
Yeah, I
specifically
mean,
Mythic
I'd
Plus.
like to touch on that for a second because doing Resto Druid a lot, especially earlier in the season, the most annoying part was going back to the APMs is going into a pool. You had to just blanket everybody, and now that's not going to be as important because one or two HOTS on the group, let's say a wild growth and maybe rejuves, is gonna do a lot more healing. Whereas before you had to get everything down, get everything out, and go into the pool and make sure everybody's good, and then keep it going. So I can't wait to kind of jump on PTR and test this out and see how it
Yeah,
feels.
it's gonna be interesting. And then the other big changes that you alluded to is that their overall damage is getting reduced, which sounds like a nerf. But then they're getting all these new talents, and the talents are very specific into buffing either your physical damage or your magic damage. So, and that goes back to, for example, the Keeper of the Grooves spec that's basically the caster one. You would still have to go into a cat form to put the bleeds because it was just too good, right? And then you would go back to
Yep.
casting. So
Yeah.
now I guess they're trying to nerf one of the damage types so that whatever form you choose to be on to do damage, that's the only damage that's gonna matter, and the other one is not. With those new talents, so everything is subject to change, especially tuning wise with numbers. But I think that the idea that they have is definitely a step into the right direction, both for healing and for doing damage as a druid.
Yeah, overall, I like these changes. I think they're good. It'll be fun to try it.
All right. Evoker is getting some changes, and the Flame Shaper is getting a small rework. And Flame Shaper, when we say Flame Shaper, that's in general for both the DPS and the healer specs. Now, it's basically buffing your engulfs to reduce, instead of ticking faster. Actually, instead of changing the rate that your breaths tick, now I think you get to cast them more often. So that kind of feels like, I mean, Flame Shaper is already big in specifically in raid. So if that ends up being a buff, that's gonna make them even more powerful, which I'm not sure is needed because not many people actually play Flame Shaper in Mythic Plus. But it's interesting to see how this is going to play out. The buffs to healing itself, they're minor. So now Dream Breath heals yourself and 5 allies instead of 5 allies only. And your HOTS are gonna benefit from the mastery, which, you know, the higher the health, the better the healing is. They're gonna benefit from mastery on each tick instead of the initial cast, which is actually nice because for regular players, you're not min-maxing when you're casting your HOTS, etc. So that's a welcoming change. But yeah, so my only sentiment here is that obviously Chrono Warden doesn't need many changes, but the Flame Shaper changes are definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah, the bonus or the CDR on haste is going to be interesting on how impactful that's going to be when it comes to things like bloodlust, PI, and even secondary stats stacking for haste, and if that's going to be a thing or not.
Yeah. All right. Hunter is getting more changes. I mean, they just got a rework specifically for survival. Now they're getting more. I don't know. Like, as we're going to see, there are some classes that are barely touched, and they're getting something huge every patch and every semi-patch now. So I just wonder where is all this love coming from. But yeah, I would like to see changes like that in some of the other
They
classes.
have a new hunter dev. I don't know if you knew that, but there's a
Oh.
recently new hunter dev, and it's funny because on the forum people will make comments about like, oh, who's developing these hunters, they must not play the game, and this specific developer will actually go and post his achievements on the forum posts that say like the hunter dev doesn't know what he's doing. So I think, you know, we can expect to see some of these changes and more for hunters, as this guy's recently new to the team.
So how do we get a new dev for, let's say, Holy Priest or something then? I mean, that's
There's a
that's
lot of change for Holy Priest though, so
yeah. I mean, that's definitely going in the right direction. I'm pretty sure a lot of classes would like to see this dev working on them as well. You know, just saying, because there's a lot, as you can see. All right, we're gonna jump through them. I'm just gonna say that survival, because I play survival a little bit. It felt really good back in the day. Then they made the changes for this patch. It felt even better, and now they're getting even more. So it's just this trend of getting this thing becoming better and better. So I'm
so
just a
good right
fan.
now too.
Yeah,
It's so good right now.
I'm just a fan, and I would like to see changes like that for other classes as well. You know. All right, so Mistweaver changes. Now, the Mistweaver changes, the first time I read them, they sounded a little bit strange to me, but then they actually started to make a lot of sense. So, what they're doing is they're stripping a lot of the AoE damage that you're doing with things like Crackling Jade Lightning or the Blackout Cleave Kicks, but they're buffing the single target of those things. They're still going to cleave, but they're going to cleave for less, and then the initial single target damage is going to be much bigger. And I think the idea behind those changes is to keep the damage of the Mistweaver basically the same, but they're buffing the single target damage overall, and then they're nerfing a little bit the AoE, which on its end is going to help healing on single target, because for me this season that was the biggest problem with Mistweaver. It feels amazing to play. The gameplay is very engaging. You have absolutely no problem healing, especially if there's a lot of mobs around you. But at least for me, where the Mistweaver struggled was those single target bosses where there's no ads to cleave, etc. And then you would hit the boss with your kicks, which are supposed to be healing for a lot. But then the bars wouldn't move that much because if the kicks don't cleave, you're doing less damage, then you're doing less healing. So a lot of the changes are targeted in that direction, and I actually like this. I like if, especially if it works as they're intending it to work. That means that that one weakness that basically Mistweaver has in my eyes is now going to get fixed, and it's going to be able to heal in single target as well as AOE. So very very excited to see how this plays out in the tournament, or not the tournament, the PTR realm.
Yeah, it's almost like they were listening to what you said. 'Cause that was your big complaint about single
Yeah.
target healing with this spec. So super interesting there.
Yeah, I guess it's not just me though. I do play Mistweaver a lot, but I wouldn't say that I'm that good at it. So I thought that maybe I'm the only one struggling with single target healing. Apparently not. Um, so yeah, I just hope that they don't spoil the class, because some of those changes sound to be quite shaking. You know, quite
Big numbers.
yeah. And Mistweaver is in a good spot right now, so I'm just afraid for them not to spoil it and break it. But if they make this work, it's actually going to be a big win, if you're asking me. All right, then we have the Holy Paladin, and I have some big question marks here. So I guess the first thing to mention, if we scroll down to Holy, and that makes absolutely no sense to me, but they're getting some mana cost reductions for okay, it's for Flash of Light and for Holy Shock, but my Paladin, I played in Mythic Plus, never dropped below 90% mana this season. I haven't have a drink once throughout my adventures to like 2700 I or something. Then in raid, our paladins are asking, "Yo, who wants my blessing of winter, which is this blessing that gives mana? Because I don't use mana, so you guys can have it." I'm like, "Ooh, give it to my shaman, yay!" So now they're getting mana nerfs. Like, what the hell? Now you're not gonna be dropping below 99% mana? Like, I get it. Okay, they have another resource that they have to manage with the oh my god, I blanked out, with the holy light charges, etc., right, the holy power, but uh like that makes absolutely no sense. Maybe it's because they're kind of making the changes towards the caster build, so they're buffing um the holy light healing and the flash of light healing. It seems like a nerf, because actually they're decreasing the holy light healing, but the idea is that the holy light and the flash of light would hit for a lot if you had the infusion of light, if you had the inflorescence of the sunwell. But if you didn't have them, they felt like you're just hitting with the thin air and hoping to heal. Now they're bringing some of the power of those spells back at the base level, and then the buffs are still going to be there, but they're going to be less. However, all of these are towards the caster build, so all those changes are in relevance to Flash of Light and the Holy Light. And I don't know if many people are actually enjoying the caster build for Paladin, so that makes those changes even more weird and strange to read about.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just trying to push to get players to play those kind of builds, because every paladin I've played with is playing melee damage, and it's nice because they're also kicking a ton because they're standing in melee. So, I think they just want to try to get additional representation for some of the other possibilities and get players to try it with some of these buffs. So, let's see. And I
Yeah,
think that's across the board. That's what they're doing with most of these things.
could be. And then speaking about being a mini healer, a lot of Paladin actually play Lightsmith right now,
Mhm.
which has those buffs to your melee abilities, which made your Crusader Strike and Judgment heal for a lot during Avenging Crusader, which is what replaces your wings and makes the melee abilities heal, pretty much like Mr. Monk. Now, they're basically nerfing first the hammer and anvil healing, and then the blessed assurance healing, which means that now your and the blessed assurance is basically when you spend holy power, the damage of your next crusader strike was increased, and people say that it was a bug, but it was increased by a lot, which technically made your Avenging Crusader so strong. Now they're nerfing this or they're fixing it, take it as you will. But that probably also means that the Lightsmith to Avenging Crusader, which is what almost everybody played in Mythic Plus, is now maybe not going to be viable anymore. And everybody's going to go back and play to Herald of the Sun, which might be a positive for some people, maybe not. But then, even if you go back and play Herald, now you probably have to cast a lot more Holy Lights. So overall, those changes, like the more I read them, the more strange they sound in my mind.
Yeah, I think it's just a push towards representation. I think that's really what it is because there's too many people playing one specific thing, and there's these talent builds, and they want people to try their talent builds, and so they just start buffing them so that people are
Uh,
enticed to do
I
it and nerfing it.
I still think that people played Herald, and then depending on how tuning goes, because those are just numbers right now, we have to try it out. But to me, it sounds that this might as well kill the Lightsmith Avenging Crusader build. Like it might not be viable at all anymore. So it might be like not just try the other build. Now the other build is the only build, but we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I'm wrong and it's still viable to play both of them. All right, time to talk about Discipline Holy, not Holy Priest, Discipline Priest, and I'll just throw it to you here because you do a much better job analyzing what we have as the changes.
Yeah, I like Divine Procession. I think that's a cool talent to include. We smite and do Void Blast a lot, so increasing atonement by 3 seconds per is nice. Inner Focus is not new. I mean, I get it; it's a new talent that is in the current iteration of the game, but it's basically doing what the old Inner Focus did, which was well, the old one guaranteed a crit on the next one. This one it gives you a 20% chance, which is I guess I won't be spending that for sure if depending on how talents play out. So interesting there. I love the changes or what they're trying to do with Purge the Wicked. I always kind of felt like it should be the equivalent of like a Rejuve or a Riptide or something like that. And it didn't really feel that strong until you got 4 or 5 of them out and just, yeah, you dot one, you penance it. But that didn't really work into the rotation very well. So oftentimes you were spamming, Purge the Wicked as tank was pulling to get them spread because the way that Discipline Priest worked at the time, right now in the current iteration, that's not you don't like they're opposite in penance. You have to work penance into your build. So I don't know. The ultimate penance, I don't play it in raid spec. I don't play it in Mythic Plus spec. So some of the push towards moving those more centrally to get players to use it was a little bit interesting. Adding contrition to baseline is a good change. I think. I don't know. It's a mixed bag for me for Discipline Priest. I think there's some things that I really like. Rapture going away is like
Yeah,
it's
that
such a
one's
big
huge.
cooldown in both PvP and PvE, and um, that one's gonna hurt. I don't know why they ripped it out, and I don't know how that's gonna play unless they're gonna add a PvP town for it or something like that for that. But I mean that's just a big one. Heaven's Wrath. I mean, well, not a big fan of that. Were you gonna look at like a note?
Sorry. Yeah, I was looking into the note because the very first thing that they say before they list the changes is that the goal of these changes is to reduce the number of cooldowns the discipline has access to. And as soon as I read this, I thought, wait, what? Because the reason I played Disc, and I shared this in previous episodes as well, but for me, Disc is quite chill to play because there's so much less buttons, so much less cooldowns. You don't have interrupt, you don't have many dispels. So you're just sitting there pressing your 2, 3 buttons, you're healing.
Yep.
If that's enough, people survive. If not, they just die. And in my mind, it's not like this had a lot of cooldowns and a lot of buttons. In fact, I think the video that I made with the amount of keybinds that you would have for each healer class that you're using constantly, this was the one with the least. Um, Compared to, let's say, Holy Paladin or Druid that had a whole ton, a lot more. So that sounds weird to me. I guess that's why they removed Rapture, but it's not like when I play Disc and something bad happens, I'm thinking, well, when I play any healer and something bad happens, I'm thinking, okay, what cooldown do I press? And in other classes, you have like different things. Disc doesn't have that much. You have your bubble, you have your shield. You have your Rapture, and then you have the pain subs. You know, that's pretty
Well,
much
now
it. Yeah.
now
So
they're forcing you to go ultimate penitence. That's what it is.
yeah,
They're bringing it central and working it so that it increases atonement. So they want you to play it. They want Discipline Priest to play Ultimate Penitence, and it's fun. I get they upgraded the shield from 50% to 100%. So if you get hit by something, which you normally do when you do it because you
yeah,
can't move, so they increase the shield. I don't like that either. But I think that's what they're trying to do. We'll take Rapture out. They'll be forced to use Ultimate Penitence as a get out of jail free card, which is what it is when you use it. But the downside often in keys, especially at the higher levels with all the things that are going on, you oftentimes get kind of stuck in a position where you either have to cancel it early and move so you don't die. I don't know if 100% health will help with that. I guess we'll see. But I don't know. Some of the changes I really like. The other ones I don't get it. And going back, one more thing on your point, there was already a rework that minimized the buttons.
yeah,
Mind Blast, including Schism,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, yeah. So they already did that. So to do it more, it just doesn't, I don't know. I think they're just trying to make people do certain abilities. In this case, it's Ultimate Penitence and removing Rapture.
Yeah, I guess you're right on this. For me, it's gonna be excited because I haven't played with the Ultimate Penitence too much. And I'm personally not a fan of Rapture for some reason. Like, I press that button, but it's kind of like with a dislike every time. I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be spreading the shields. But yeah, so we'll see how that plays out. Apart from that, the other changes, I'm actually like the Smite extending the active atonements
That's great.
by 3 seconds. I think that's because we had a similar tier set in Dragonflight at some point. And I think 3 seconds is more than what we had back
Huge.
then. And
Three
that,
seconds is huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
back then it felt good. So now that's probably going to feel even better. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to this change. And then I think they also reduced, there was a note for Void Weaver, they reduced the damage of the Entropic Rift. So that's also kind of like a nerf. Maybe they're trying to push people to play a little bit more into Oracle, which I'm definitely not going to enjoy. Because I'm not a fan of this hero talent spec. But overall, I guess we'll have to wait and see how all of this plays out on the PTR because those changes are not small, so to speak. But it might end up putting it into maybe even a better place.
We'll see. I mean, the going back real quick on the Entropic Rift, they nerfed that because they're buffing Purge the Wicked, and they're also changing how it interacts with like spreading the damage, and so they want it to be a bit more meaningful. I'm not too worried about that. I mean, I do like Entropic Rift for a major cooldown. Oftentimes, I'm lining it up for big events so that when it collapses, it does heals. So the damage in between and maybe even the damage at the end isn't as impactful, I don't think, as being able to kind of have more sustain with Purge the Wicked. So it's interesting. Like you said, let's just play and see how it goes.
All right, and the PTR is probably going to be up after New Year's, so just a couple of weeks away, and we'll see how this actually plays out. All right, moving on to Holy Priest, and there's a long list here as well. There seems to be a lot of changes as well, a lot of new talents, a lot of reworks. The tree itself is going to shake up a little bit, and yeah. Do you want to go first on this one?
I just they want people playing holy. I mean, it's obvious those are all big numbers, very low representation in Mythic Plus, high representation in Raid. I mean, way higher than Discipline Priest, way higher. Um, but in keys they're just non-existent. And there's a reason for that because they're not very impactful in keys. I mean, if you're a super giga Chad, yeah, you can make Holy Priest work. So you priests don't come after me. Holy Priests don't come after me saying it's bad. But a lot of the people that play it, there's just you just don't have that same oomph that you get with Disc and some of the other healing classes. So they want to see again, in my opinion, they want to see more representation. And so there's these big changes and reworks and bigger numbers for Holy Priest to get that representation so people start playing it in keys.
Yeah. There were also some weird notes here. I can't find it specifically, but they were saying that they're aiming to do more. Actually, there it is. To provide options for gameplay styles centered around the renew uptime, which in my mind sounds a bit weird. You know, we already have Druid. We don't need another Druid hot spec. But they're also doing a lot of changes. For example, the Apotheosis is getting huge buffs, so now you're gonna be even more powerful when it's active. They're putting some power into the Prayer of Healing. They're kind of removing the Circle of Healing. It's embedded into other skills now, kind of like what they did with Disc. So overall, it seems like very interesting changes. I'm not sure. This is definitely going to play really nice in raid. It's gonna make Holy Priest even better in raid, I think. But I'm not sure how it's going to tune out and end up being in Mythic Plus. Since there's also a lot of Lightwell changes, which is also I think another raid talent that's primarily used there. And it seems that all the talent changes, like some talents are getting reduced down to 1 point, some talents are getting removed. There's new talents. So it seems that it might end up being a completely new class, basically, with completely new builds, completely new talent trees. And I think it needs something like that, specifically in Mythic Plus, because not many people have played it there, and it needs some love in that direction.
Yeah, so two thoughts. One of them is a response to your comment about the renew. I think that's just getting back to the Holy Priest kind of core and what it used to really work around renew. So maybe getting back to that. The second thing is, and I'm just gonna make a guess here. I There's no way that these changes will roll into raid. I think that what we will see is during PTR, a lot of those numbers will say something to the effect of reduced beyond 5 players or something like that, because those numbers are massive. And when you look at that in a raid environment, that's just humongous. So if you ever want to feel super ultra powerful, jump on PTR when it goes live, play Holy Priest. You're gonna have fun for the first couple keys, or even the raids, because it's gonna do massive amounts of healing. I could see it becoming one of the meta specs for raid if it stays like this for sure, because those are huge numbers.
Yeah, and then they're gonna nerf it, so take your
Yeah, it will.
chances, right?
By the time it comes out, it'll have to be. It'll be
Just a
something.
funny note here. It's funny how all these classes have this wall of text with all the changes, and then the rogue gets 2 lines, and bam, let's go to Shaman. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess they don't have a rogue developer at all. Maybe.
I mean, Rogue's in a good place, and I think that the first one there, Blind and Gouge, they did the same thing with Monk with Paralyze. I think there was one other class that got something else where it's just like, instead of something breathing on it and it breaks it out, at
Yeah,
least
there's
now there's gonna
certain
be a little
amount
bit
to
of,
break CC. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
which is a good change. I like that
well,
change.
you say that the rogue's in a good place, but I don't see that many in Mythic Plus. We do have a couple of rogues in raids, but one of them is basically a PvPer. I think PvP is where it shines.
Yeah,
So I just don't see it
they
that much in
pump.
PvE.
Yeah, I think there's just they don't, what do they do? They kick, and there's some CC, so it's like
Oh,
warrior, right?
they
Like,
have this poison, right, which reduces the damage that the boss does.
yeah,
So it's kind of like
yeah,
mandatory to have in raids. Um,
yeah.
but if that's the only reason they bring them and people just don't want to play it for whatever, like that's
So
weird.
fun. It cranks. It does so much damage too, especially assassination. Even outlaw does good damage.
Yeah,
I
if
don't know
people
why
know
there's
how
no
to play it.
representation, and like you said, not a lot of changes here. So don't expect to see any big changes in the meta.
You're
Sure,
right.
not for
Well,
Rogue.
let's jump to my favorite class, the Shaman. So, pretty interesting changes here as well. Ancestral Guidance is getting removed altogether. So that's for all Shaman specs, which means that your Elemental and Enhancement Shamans will not have this option to off heal now, in a 2-minute cooldown. Now, that I guess from like group perspective doesn't make much sense to me because okay, AG was definitely very powerful back in the day. They nerfed it, and
Yeah,
with it they actually nerfed the way that it worked for Resto as well. Because at the beginning of Dragonflight, Ancestral Guidance was a cooldown that you could use to heal through boss mechanics, as a restoration, I mean. Although you could actually use it on Enhancement Shaman to heal through boss mechanics as well, right? So they nerfed it, and in its current state, what's in the game right now, it's actually not very powerful. A lot of people actually, as Restoration Shamans, press it in conjunction with their Ascendants so that they get a little bit more power for it. I personally press it as a feeler where I don't need much healing, but just a little bit extra. But honestly, in its nerfed variant, I'm not sad to see it gone because I was kind of used to pressing it as a cooldown, and now it's not, right? So from restoration perspective, it's bad to see it gone. I'm not gonna feel sorry about it, but I don't get why they're reducing it and removing it from the DPS specs. Now we've been talking about having less defensives, having less help for the healer from the other classes, so that all the healing is actually done by the healer, and you're not dependent on your teammates. But then if you're doing that, then you should do it for all the classes, not just like the shaman and everybody else still has their defensives and group wide damage mitigations. But yeah, anyway, so that's a huge change for the game in general. I'll mention that both Elemental and specifically Enhancement are getting huge changes. And as much as I would like to see tuning and changes to many of the specs and the classes, it feels like too much lately. I'll just say that because I play both specs, all three specs on the Shaman, and some of those changes basically make it a brand new spec. So you kind of have to learn it from scratch. That was the case throughout Dragonflight. That's the case now. So it's a lot of volatile changes, and I don't know. I'm not complaining, but it's also too much at some point. I think that's worth noting. And then moving on to Restoration Shaman, they're focused on simplification and removing some of the keybinds. So that is actually that's something that's going to be quite welcome because the Shaman is one of the classes with a lot of buttons. They are combining the Mana Tide with your Healing Tide totem. So that is interesting. It's going to... Right now, you use those separately in Raid. You basically pop your Mana Tide as soon as you can so that you can use it again later in the fight. Now you have to be more careful when and how to use that, but at least you're going to get it in Mythic Plus as well, because you don't run Mana Tide in Mythic Plus. So that's a welcoming change there. New talent, Earth Shield and Water Shield are not going to consume charges anymore. So that's one less maintenance button that you have to press because you're basically renewing the Earth Shield constantly on your tank. They're eating charges like crazy. Healing Wave is doing a little bit more healing to targets with your Echo. And then let me see what are the other interesting one. Downpour is getting some rework, which means that now you have more time to press it after you cast your Healing Rain or Surging Totem. That is quite welcome because right now you kind of feel pressure to press it right away once you cast them. So that is very nice. Some changes and some talent builds are getting shaken up, so we'll see how that plays up with the new talents and some of the talents that are getting removed. And let me see what else was there. Oh yeah, so another big thing, Primordial Wave is removed. Primordial Wave for Restoration Shaman is removed. You have no idea how many comments I would get once I do a Shaman guide or something like that. People would say, oh, please give me a build that doesn't play Primordial Wave, because Primordial Wave is kind of like a Disc Priest. You have to like set it up. You have to have the Riptides going to everybody, and then you pop that, and then you cast your Healing Wave, and it heals everybody. Now, Primordial Wave actually followed a little bit the Ancestral Guidance route. It got nerfed to the ground for the War Within, so people actually ended up not using it. And I see a trend there. Like when Blizzard is going to remove something, at least when it comes to Shamans, they're first nerfing it to the ground, and then they're like slowly removing it silently in the background. Now, Primordial Wave, I don't think many people are going to miss. I actually made a small video of people being happy about it, because we've been asking about this for a long time. And the takeaway here is, if something is not working for your class, if something is inconvenient and you don't want to play it, I guess if you keep crying about it, eventually you might win.
Maybe. Speak up. That's right.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. There's probably going to be builds that are going to be positioned around the Riptide a little bit more. We'll see how all of this plays out. But I mean, there's a lot of things that are removed here, but I see positives mostly. I don't like that Ancestral Vigor, for example, is going to be a 2-point talent now, but we're yet to see how all of this plays on the PTR as well. In general, we're getting some moves into the right direction, although AG is now gone. All right. So jumping on to the next topic, which is some leaked tier set bonuses. They actually had a small preview, and I guess the takeaway here is that every class is going to get some kind of a buff, and there's like 3 or 4 kinds of buffs, and they have interesting names like jackpot, luck of the draw. There were some other ones here, winning streak, etc. And it seems like those buffs are they're basically stacks, and the only thing that changes in the 2 set tier piece bonus for each of the classes is how you're going to obtain them. So pressing some of your buttons is gonna grant them in some way, right? And they're gonna give you some kind of a damage buff or healing buff or something like that. And then your 4-piece bonus is basically going to augment on top of that something specific to your class. Usually pressing another button is going to give you even more benefits or something like that. I think what they're trying to do here is they're trying to somehow unify the way that the tier set bonuses work. And some of the first sentiments that I got in my guild and people around me was that, ooh, they look too similar to each other. But once you start reading them and delve a little bit deeper into them, you'll see that they're actually quite different. Like it's the same bonus, it's the same buff, but it does different things for different classes. And then your 4-piece is going to be very specific to your spec. So some of them are also sound pretty good on paper, but some of them actually don't make a lot of sense. For example, I'm on the Preservation Evoker right now. Your 4-piece bonus, so for healers, you get something called Insurance, which is just a hot on a target, right? And it just matters on how you got those hots rolling based on your class. And then the 4-piece bonus for Preservation is when you use your Verdant Embrace, you give an insurance to the target and yourself, and the cooldown is reduced. Excuse me. So that sounds weak compared to, let's say, the Holy Paladin, which not only puts insurances on more allies, but it also gets cooldown reduction to their Divine Toe, right? So those two sound completely different and completely far away from power level from each other. And of course, there's going to be a lot of tuning that's going to happen. But I guess they're trying to move into a little bit more interesting direction for this next raid. And I think that this could make the tuning overall of the game maybe a little bit easier for them, because now you have the same buffs, etc. It's just how you obtain them and how much of them you obtain. But I don't know. Do you think it's going to be boring that everything is going to revolve around the same buffs?
No, I think it's got, like you pointed out, I think it's good that it might help a little bit when it comes to adjustment and tuning. First of all, I love the naming convention, since we're going into the Goblin area and it's all casino based and around like gambling and stuff. I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's thematic, which is kind of nice. We haven't really seen, that in tier set bonuses like that, so that's kind of interesting. I'm curious to see how these interactions are going to work and how they might change some of the rotations, or if it's just like keep playing the way you've been playing and it's just going to work. But I like it. I think it's going to be interesting to see. It doesn't feel like it's super heavy like player power. It's just tier set bonuses, which are cool. So I'm super excited for these.
Yeah, we'll see how they play out. As I said, some of them are actually quite powerful. And they give you a lot. Some of them are probably going to get tuned. But they have done a lot of changes to the tier set bonuses in the past as well. So I think that everything is subject to even change completely here if they decide they need to. All right, let's jump to another topic, which is actually quite exciting. There is a Renown track released for the new reputation that you get with the goblins, and there are some bangers here, some very interesting stuff. So first, you get a stacking damage and healing buff for the raid at certain Renown levels. Does that mean that we're basically going to get rid of the severe sense as the buff that we have right now? And we're going to get the same stuff, but now from a Renown, which is also going to be time gated, right? You're not going to get to max Renown straight away. So that is interesting. And then you are going to get Dinars at Renown 17 and 19, which I would assume is pretty high and is going to be later in the season. but the dinars are going to, if you go through the text here, there's going to be a vendor and he's going to sell stuff from the raid. And that is another thing that we have been asking a lot, specifically in this that time of season 1. So now we're actually going to get it, and that sounds very exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I love this change. I think it helps with bringing more content back to the world. A lot of the times, the reputation stuff for Renown is in the world, not in raid. Although you can get some in raid. So things like doing things out in the world that helps give you individual. Because I think that stacking damage healing buffs individual, right? So once you get that Renown, it's for you in the raid.
It is
Raid skip.
individual, but it is warbound. So once you,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
yeah, the renown is basically warbound as now as well. So
yeah.
once you get it on your main, you're gonna have it on your ults as well.
Amazing. The raid skip's kind of interesting that you could get a
Yeah.
skip. Now how that's gonna play out for the guild is interesting.
I
If
mean,
one
once
person is just
once you
Giga
get it,
Chad,
and then everybody gets it, I think.
yeah, I guess it's gotta be. But I think it's cool. It's cool instead of keeping it all within the raid, bringing some of that out into the world and for dailies and things like that is an interesting change. So,
Yeah, I mean the raid portal is tied to the renown as well, because before that was exclusively for CE guilds only, and if you didn't kill the last boss on Mythic, you wouldn't get it, right? So now everybody gets it. So that's another huge plus. Dinars
huge.
definitely something like I cannot express how stoked I'm for this, because there are certain items that you simply cannot get, and another big pain point for me is that, as I said, I play all 3 specs on my Shaman, and okay, somehow I managed to gear my Shaman for Resto, which maybe is my main spec, but then if I want to switch to enhancement, I don't have weapons, I don't have trinkets, and I don't have easy ways to obtain them. So that is going to be a huge step in the right direction as well. Obviously, it's time gated. Obviously, you get only 2 of them from what we can see from the renowned tracks. But even 2 is better than 0. And it's gonna be those 2 items like the Spy Masters that never drop for you and you can never get. So huge win. My only concern is that we've seen players, especially in high-end guilds, do some crazy stuff to farm reputations and renown tracks.
Oh,
If you
oh,
remember when they released that island in the Dragonflight, they were farming those little flowers on the island. Each one of them would give you like, I remember it was like 5 rep. So you had to do like, I don't know, 3,000 or something to get your max level, and they would still do it. So my only concern is that they need to somehow guard how you get the rep in a very precise way, so that people don't cheat and people don't get unfair advantage by somehow just getting top renown in the first week, and then they get all those benefits with the stacking buffs, because there is actually a lot of power connected to that renown.
yeah,
It's
sure.
the dinars. You're even gonna get free augment runes, and then obviously that stacking buff.
Dance.
But yeah,
Yeah.
as we talked about in the past, I don't think anyone's gonna be angry when they see that. I think everybody's gonna be happy about this announcement.
Yeah. Those are welcome changes for sure.
All right, and then I guess we can wrap it up with another announcement about the crests. Now the Gilded Crests, which is the top level crests, are going to be available as before from Mythic Plus dungeons 8 and above, from the Mythic raid, and from Delves tier 11. Now, if you get the Devil's Map Bounty, which is that lucky map that can drop every now and then, you get some Gilded Crests from there as well. But that is completely RNG, and I think you're limited into only like, I don't know, 1-2 maps per week. But then every time you do a plus 11 delve, you get Gilded Crests, which means that you can now spam plus 11 delves and farm them. And that sounds appealing, but I was doing the plus 11 delves this week because there's an achievement to do every single delve at a plus 11. So I was like, oh, I need to get this achievement then, right? And those are actually not easy. Those are actually quite hard. They take a lot of time. I was too lazy to figure them out as a DPS, so I'm just going in as a healer, and they take even longer, I guess. Which is probably a stupid and funny thing to do. But it might be the case that you might, depending on the amount that drops there, of course, but it might be the case that you're better off just going and doing a fast dungeon to get crest than soloing a plus 11 delve.
Yeah, we know
Nevertheless,
people.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say, people always min max, right? Like I noticed. I don't know if you noticed, but it seems like now I know this is a kind of off topic, but it's related. I noticed in keys right now, everybody's doing 9s, and I'm sure somebody figured out the math that 9 makes more sense than 8 for crest, so do the 9s. So I think something like that will happen with this. Somebody's gonna do the math and say, okay, time wise, this makes the most sense, and then everybody will just follow suit. There's always a meta build, and the same thing's gonna happen here.
Oh, for min maxers, yes, but I think it's nice that that gives options first. So if
Yeah,
you're not
for
min
sure.
maxing, you have this option to go and do that if you want. Although plus 11s are probably going to be relatively hard in the beginning when you're not geared. So that's the thing. And then, based on some of the comments that we had when we talked about Mythic Plus and Delves in some of the previous episodes, there are actually a lot of people who play exclusively Delves. They don't want to go into Mythic Plus because they have to interact with other people. The environment there could be toxic, all of those things that are famous for Mythic Plus, and probably not in a good way. So there were a lot of people that came into the comments and say, hey, I'm actually that guy. I just play Delves. I enjoy it. It's my solo content. It's what I do in game. I don't engage with the rest of the end game type of content. So I think that's going to be a huge win for them as well, because now they still get like hero track gear from there, etc. And now they can upgrade that hero track gear with their Gilded Crests if they do plus 11s instead of being forced to go and farm Mythic Plus. And that's a funny topic, because we complain sometimes that we're Mythic Plus players and we have to go do a raid or PvP or something that we don't want to. But there was also an interesting comment that said, hey, I don't know why you're complaining, because everybody else who is not playing Mythic Plus, if they're doing raid, if they're doing whatever, all of them are actually forced to go into Mythic Plus to farm the crest, to farm everything else, right? So I guess that gives options to people, and it's quite welcoming change for sure.
Agreed.
All right. Now there's a few more topics about the tier set models, how they look, the transmogs. There's some mounts that are released and how they look, etc. But we're just gonna skip that because obviously we're both sick, and we can spare ourselves a little bit of talking points for transmogs. But you can definitely check Wowhead and all the resources that are out there for those additional materials and the links that are available there. We do have a special episode coming up for you at the end of this week. So stay tuned for that. We're going to have another special guest, but I'm not going to reveal much more right now. And then happy holidays if we don't see you before that. Yeah. And after New Year's, more episodes and hopefully PTR to keep us engaged until the new patch. So thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.
Now, bye-bye and take care.
See you later.